Hello everybody, I'm Conquering History Games and welcome to the first pre-recorded campaign of this mod on the channel. Today I'm going to be playing some Hearts of Iron 4, The New Order. So for those of you who are new and are not aware, The New Order is a mod of Hearts of Iron 4 that starts in the 1960s. And it shows a world in which Hitler and the Nazis were victorious in World War II, and what the consequences of that alternate history have led to. It's a very I'm trying to think of how I can possibly explain the mod, but it's definitely something that is outside the. There's a lot of outside the box thinking, we'll say, in this particular mod. Things get very strange. It's definitely well, even down to the UI, it definitely has its own aesthetic. Let's say that it's a mod that has its own unique aesthetic, and I've already played through it one time to get just the general feel of it, so I can kind of understand how some of the mechanics work. Go check that in my live stream playlists, where I did, I think, 11 videos worth of recreating the Soviet Union. I picked that one first, just using a random number generator to decide what country I was going to play. But I was taking suggestions throughout the streams, and ultimately I decided that I was going to play as the United States of America for my first pre-recorded campaign. So we're in version 1.10C, Kali version 1.10.3, and apparently this has actually added a few more details to the United States as well, so that's going to be interesting. Now I have an idea for what president I specifically want to play as, because it's my understanding that the United States has the most amount of work put into it, even beyond Germany, which is of course a major focus of the mod. But I don't want to give away who I'm going to be playing for, so that there's who I'm going to be going for, so that way there's a little bit of suspense. By the time that you're watching this series, I will have already recorded all of it. Just as a heads up, please be sure to subscribe and click the bell so you'll be notified whenever a new video in the series goes up. Also, if there's ever a point where I repeat myself, it's because I do want to go for a specific president, and I have been given some bare bones instructions by some people on the Discord. Thank you especially to the Tortle on Discord, on the New Order Discord, who helped me out. So I kind of know generally how to get to a certain person without getting spoilers as to things that happen. You know, just the very bare bones is what I'm saying. So anyway, let's you should go down in the comments and say who you think I'm going to be going for, although I think I have said it in the live stream who I'm most interested in, although I might have changed my mind since then. So brief history of the New Order. A new order has descended upon the world. With the triumph of the Axis powers in the Second World War, the world has been forever changed. Yesterday's great empires are now dust under the boot of today's victors. A German lands on the moon as Hitler fades. In America, the old system lies shattered. The Mediterranean's power balance lies on a knife's edge. China, little more than a slave of Japan, begins to transform itself, and in Russia, long-damned warlords realize their destiny. Yeah, so like I was saying before, the first time that I played this, I picked one of the Russias, because there's so many of them. I did it through a combination. At first I polled for which of these areas to go into, and it ended up being Russia, and then I did RNG to pick which one was it? Here we go. Buryatia, who is Valery Sablin, real-life character. Look him up. Apparently I picked the most wholesome, according to the chat, the most wholesome person in the entire freaking game. Or at least in Russia, when I went with Sablin. But today, we're going to be doing some of... Oops. Wait a minute. We want to go back, because I want to read some stuff. But yeah, we're going to be playing as the United States of America, who I believe is the head of the Organized Free Nations faction, which the name implies what they are. So, yeah, here we go. While America joined the Second World War, it was too late. The United States performed admirably, humbling the Kriegsmarine in the Atlantic and beginning to turn the tide in the Pacific, but the invention of the atom bomb ended any hope of American victory for those few remaining allies. Now, 20 years later, America stands divided. While the Depression is slowly ending, The American political scene sits in chaos. The government remains locked between the uneasy Republican Democrats and the National Progressive Party, a failing union of America's political outcasts. With the Civil Rights Union greatly shifting the political sphere, the 1960s will herald the greatest threats America has ever faced. And so we have Nixon currently in charge, whose ideology is liberal democracy. Next elections are going to be in 64, and he's the ruling party, Republican Democratic, but Republican slanted, of course. Now, I was not interested in this series, or in this mod, when I first started to hear word of it, but the reason for that was because the way I would hear about it was I would be doing live streams and stuff, and people would harass me about it. They'd say, have you played the New Order? Have you played the New Order? And I would look around on the Steam Workshop and I didn't see it. And this was before it had come out. And I would just get bothered about it constantly. And this had nothing to do with the devs, but basically I just got completely turned off from the mod because you had these people. Maybe they were, in hindsight, they probably were trolling or something. But they were just talking about, like, it's the best Hearts of Iron 4 mod there's ever been, man. It wasn't even out yet, you know. And eventually I got so sick of it that I said, I'm not going to play it. I'm not going to play it. You all have annoyed me too much. But I ended up doing those live streams, as I'm sure many of you who are watching this now saw, and I did end up enjoying it. So I want to explore it some more. So I just want to be perfectly clear, though, that I never had any problem with any dev on the New Order. It was strictly the people who harassed them. Who harassed me, I should say. And it's my understanding I wasn't the only one they were doing that to. So, the United States of America. Years ago, before the talk of the Nazi jackboot and the Japanese tyranny of the Isles, the stars and stripes flew high and mightily above the likeness of a different worldwide sickness, that of the excesses of the Roaring Twenties, the explosion of the Wall Street crash, and the dread of the Great Depression that journeyed forth, wreaking havoc upon a crippled America. It was here that the ideas of a Rooseveltian New Deal burned, as comparisons to the failures of the Soviets' Nikolai Bukharin's own doings left the ideas unpopular and unsupported. And it was here that Al Smith came on top for the Democrats. I believe this is the Al Smith who was the first Catholic major party nominee for president, allowing for then incumbent President Herbert Hoover to maintain his stay in the White House. With 1936, however, things changed for the United States. Joseph P. Kennedy, that would be JFK and all his brothers' fathers, promised an administration of balance and isolation, seeking to tiptoe away from the breaking out of war in Europe by the Nazis, despite the constant pleas from Allied states. Peace and abstention reigned in North America, allowing the country to maneuver a recovery from the Great Depression and bolster the American economy. Excuse me. However, calm and stability hath reigned not, for on December 7th, 1941, a date which will live in infamy, the United States of America was suddenly and deliberately attacked by naval and air forces of the Empire of Japan, crippling the United States fleet as it rested in Pearl Harbor. Oops, wait. Yeah, there's a lot to read here, y'all. But it's fine. You guys are going to like it. No promises I'm unpausing this episode, though. With the Navy on the retreat and a new president to take hold, President Harry S. Truman promised the American people that they would see the beacon of liberty push through for the cause of democracy, a promise which sunk to the depths of the Pacific on July 4th, 1945, as a flash of light consumed the island of Hawaii upon the dropping of an atomic bomb on the previously attacked Pearl Harbor. To make matters worse, late August saw the signing of the Akagi Accords, officially ending the war with the first great American defeat in history, as it signed away the state of Hawaii and the naval bases of Los Angeles and San Francisco to Japanese control. So, as we can see, hold on. Where's Hawaii? Damn it. There we go. So yeah, Japan owns Hawaii. And here are the ports. You see there's Los Angeles, and you zoom in. There's the Empire of Japan. Come over here, zoom into San Francisco, Empire of Japan. Okay, and we'll deal with that eventually, of course. By the way, some of you are probably asking, like, what are the victory conditions for this campaign going to be considered to be? I genuinely don't have any in particular in terms of war. I'm most concerned with showing off some of the fun domestic stuff, and like I said, getting the presidents that I want in power. So, you know, I guess we'll try to do the best we can as part of the Organized Free Nations as its leader, I think. Let me check that. Yeah, we're the faction leader, but, Mostly I just wanted to have fun with the domestic things. Late August, Hawaii. Oh yeah. Alongside endless amounts of reparations to pay and the lifting of embargoes to Allied aligned states. The chaotic 1948 elections saw Thomas Dewey signed Trump? The embarrassed Democrats over a reeling nation, having to deal with the planting of the seeds towards the new political paths of the United States. In the first post-war election, an angry and bitter American populace almost unanimously turned their backs upon the ruling Democratic Party. Oh yes, Thomas Dewey took charge after Truman, because the Democrats lost World War II. Okay. Facing waves of defections to the Republicans and the loss of nearly all of their Senate seats, the party desperately sought a way to survive. Ultimately, a radical solution was proposed by several former Democrats turned Republicans, such as Senator Lyndon B Johnson, a union with the now triumphant Republican Party. After much political wrangling, the two parties were united to form the Republican Democratic Party, briefly turning America into a one-party state. Thus, the legendary General Dwight D. Eisenhower, famed for his bold defense along the English line against the Nazis. Yes, so that is, and again, I'm so sorry if I'm not giving information correctly, but it's my understanding that Scotland was able to remain free, even though they're not in our faction, and Eisenhower was the one who held this defensive line up here from stopping the entirety of Great Britain falling towards Nazi forces. Won the election as the first president under the Republican Democrats. Eisenhower worked hard in creating the Organization of Free Nations, an economic and defensive alliance of the democratic forces left within the world. However, with the final declaration of Eisenhower's intent to oversee Hawaii's reintroduction to the Union against the Akagi Accords, the United States has firmly entrenched its position in the dangerous world of today, whilst new rising political stars come to sit in the most powerful seats of the country. Now, as we look, I'm just saying, if Nixon's already president, he's hardly a rising star. Like, you've just done it. You're the star now. You're the guy. Okay, Richard Milhouse Nixon and Vice President John Fitzgerald Kennedy, son of former President Joseph P. Kennedy, find themselves at the helm of the White House. Now, another thing, this was like the only thing I knew about the New Order way back before it was done, and I had serious misgivings, and I kind of still do, about the idea of a Nixon-Kennedy administration for a lot of reasons, but ultimately it doesn't matter, because, you know, it's a fantasy world, whatever, and you know, we're going to see how things go. It's going to get interesting, I guarantee it. So, where was I? We were going to... However, the Republican Democrats no longer remain unchallenged in the political arena. As the American Depression wore on and the matter of civil rights began to enter the public consciousness, some Americans began to turn to alternative voices to represent their grievances. The National Progressive Fund, formed by Henry A. Wallace and Glenn Taylor in 1947, became a beacon of progressivism. Henry A. Wallace was Franklin Roosevelt's third vice president, while George S. Patton's Patriotic Party was established in 1951 to represent hardline conservative interests. Both were able to carry states in the elections of 1952 and 56, but neither could unseat the Republican Democrats. In the interests of presenting a united anti-establishment voice, the two parties made the controversial decision to unite under one banner, the National Progressive Party. Though whether this Frankenstein of a political movement can have an impact remains to be seen. Where we're at now. In the year 1962, Richard Nixon is the President of the United States of America. Fortunately, his work is cut out for him. Americans from coast to coast desire social reform at all levels. A new crisis is brewing in enemy-controlled Hawaii as the aggressive Japanese place nuclear missiles on the island chain. Racism runs rampant across the South as African Americans plead for the Civil Rights Act to be signed, while many white Southerners fiercely oppose the act. The Cold War between us, Germany, and the Empire of Japan is starting to heat up once again, and it is President Nixon's job to bring his country to its rightful place on the world stage. Okay, next page. Okay, so this is just talking about who the various key figures here are. But you know what? Because there's a lot of reading here, and because something I heard and something I've definitely learned while playing the live stream is, more than anything, TNO is a visual novel in the context of a Hearts of Iron 4 game. I'm sure there is going to be warfare, but just saying that's how it is. Anyway, I'm just going to be right back. I got to get some water. Okay, I'm back. So, the Republican Democratic Party. Wallace F. Bennett. Senator Wallace F. Bennett watches the presidency of Richard Nixon with growing concern that his distrust of others and near obsessive need for control could be his undoing, even as America convulses from the twin pressures of the Cold War and civil rights unrest at home. The Utah senator believes above all else that a steady hand is needed to stabilize the ship of state in these trying times. And if Nixon fails to deliver, then it may fall upon him to provide the leadership that America needs so desperately. Lyndon B Johnson. Senator Lyndon Baines Johnson's career is a case study in marrying high-minded ideals to the calculated opportunism of every great statesman. The Texan's passion for change began with a naked-eye view of American poverty as a public school teacher, which followed him through every rung of the Lone Star State's curious honorum. In the face of President Kennedy's inaction, the very same zeal had pushed the Democrat congressman and his like-minded colleagues into the grand old party's welcoming embrace. Yet it was also he who had convinced his new colleagues to caucus with his old party's tatters in 1952. For having helped restore their strength, the Republicans and Democrats rewarded the man who was one of both their own with the Senate leadership. An iron gauntlet he has since bloodied against dissenters and rivals alike to great effect. Now Johnson presides over the strongest majority in the Augusta Body's history. Many speculate when, not if, the master of the Senate unveils his vision of the future as president, and what depths he will sink to thrust America's towards it. This needs a little bit of a grammar check, some of this stuff. So, the National Progressive Party, the NPP for short. Before there was an NPP, there was Senator J. Strom Thurmond. In response to the Supreme Court declaring school segregation unconstitutional, he led an exodus of Southern senators from the Democratic Party to General Patton's Patriot Party in 1954. 2 years later, he would negotiate a merger between that party and the National Progressive Front to form the modern NPP. As congressional leader of the far right, alongside his lieutenants Richard Russell and Robert Byrd, he has used his power to quash any attempt at ending America's racial segregation. Though he has had no interest in running for president ever since his failed attempt in 1960, the elder statesman remains one of the most powerful politicians in America. Strom Thurmond actually did run for president in real life. Go look that up. It's fascinating. Senator Margaret Chase Smith of Maine is an anomaly in the National Progressive Party, normally caucusing with the right on economic policy and center on segregation. Resolutely opposed to the Republican Democrats, whom she sees as cowardly, unprincipled opportunists, she broke with them after the end of the war. One of the few NPP senators to maintain their seats after the RD landslide in 1960, she has managed to gain a great deal of influence among the few remaining members. She fully intends to keep the NPP together as a strong and hawkish opposition to the RDs, while reining in the most extreme impulses of socialists and segregationists alike. George Wallace, who you all have heard me quote and paraphrase many times, Alabama's George Wallace is an enigma. As the old segregationist Democratic machine imploded, he happily jumped ship from party to party, ultimately winding up as one of the scions of the National Progressive Party's far right. Wallace portrays himself as both a proud Southerner and an American patriot, fighting for law and order at home and anti-fascism abroad. Truthfully, he's an opportunist who will do what it takes to get elected. And if that means re-entrenching segregation across the United States, so be it. Michael Harrington. In the Midwest, Michael Harrington finds himself the unlikely standard bearer of the Center NPP, the culmination of an ideological odyssey that brings the Democratic Socialists into the arms of the National Progressive Party. But America has long turned a deaf ear to the plight of the poor and disenfranchised, and though he works tirelessly with his allies, including Maureen Neuberger of Oregon, The party continues to struggle for a coherent message between the more centrist center politicians, such as Henry M. Jackson, and the regressive policies of the far right. But he is prepared to take his case directly to the people as he works on his great expose of the other America. Also you're probably noticing like these pictures are different. So that's like, for example, here you've got the Republican Democrats R, Republican Democrats state. What is this? Open the United States government and voting GY. I'll get to that later. Maybe at the next episode of this race. So they're kind of split up. It's very similar to just think of it like in Kaiserreich, when you look at the political party popularities in the United States, there's 2 slots for Republicans and 2 slots for Democrats because there's branches within them. Where was I? When one thinks of the MPP, Henry Martin Scoop Jackson comes to mind as easily as his name leaves their lips. The senator and erstwhile Democrat from Washington was among the first to defect for the fledgling alliance between America's progressives and Southern conservatives. In effect, Scoop's message embodies such compromise by filling the niche between Michael Harrington and Strom Thurmond, eschewing radical and racist rhetoric while synthesizing the favorable features of America's political extremes. Strong social safety nets, a hardline stance against Japan, and others. The party could have carried the man and his ideas to the White House, but for Thurmond's own disastrous showing against Nixon. Interesting. For its moderates' standard bearer, America's wishes were clear. Someone better must take the National Progressives' mantle in 1964. Someone better than the Missourian rabble-rouser, at least. Okay, so we got progressives, features. Chart America's course by influencing its quadrennial elections, enacting bills, and vying for control of the august Senate. Defend the old guard and old politics with the Republican Democrats, or offer the American people alternatives with the National Progressives. Contain fascism abroad through subterfuge and proxy wars. So that's all that. Region info. This is also important. Sorry guys, I got to keep reading it. But we got to know what's going on in the world. So yeah, I think we're not gonna unpause today. I'm sorry, but there's just so much to do. Actually, is there anything that I want to go over before? Here, let's take a break here and just go over to the we'll do national spirits I guess later, but Americas. Guyana, it's over here in South America, part of our Organization of Free Nations. The situation in the Republic of Guyana is tense and grows worse with every passing day. The rights of Indo-Guyanans are continually being restricted or taken away by the iron-fisted President Forbes Burnham. Burnham himself is increasingly combative and dismissive of the United States, who put him into power in the first place. As Guyana draws closer and closer to dictatorship, conflict seems inevitable. The Dominion of... so that's Guyana. Over here we have Canada. The Dominion of Canada is, on paper, under the British Crown. In reality, she is far more shackled to her southern neighbor, the United States of America. As British exiles fled the Isles, however, they brought much of their culture and more conservative ideals. This discrepancy with the local Canadians has led to a significant amount of friction between the native French English-speaking Canadians, the Québécois, and the British exiles. As Québécois terrorist groups like the FLQ and the FUNQ, also known as FunQ, cause F is for friends who blow stuff up together, U is for Canada, for you and me. Anyway, Canada's problems are striking home in more ways than one. Iceland, aka U.S. Forces Iceland. Iceland is independent only in name. As you can see here, in reality, it's a military government, is effectively a military protectorate of the United States. Nearly as many American soldiers live on the frigid island nation as there are native Icelanders. These Americans enforce law and protect the country from Germanic influence, but also use Icelandic taxes, marry Icelandic women, and exploit Icelandic resources. In short, people are tired of American occupation and exploitation. It is a tense situation at best and growing tenser by the day. Now, Mexico, under Mateos, Having once prospered by staying away from other nations' wars, the Republic of Mexico now seems poised to wage war on itself. Not a day passes by without squabbles erupting between the country's protectionist elites and the ambassadors of companies from New York to Tokyo. Moreover, the Partido Revolucionario Institucional, aka the PRI, has shaped the country's image into the regime it had overthrown. A wealthy, maladroit, and contemptibly corrupt one-party state. That's a terrific turn of phrase. To the chagrin of the many whose upliftment it had promised long ago. It's like, so it went the opera way, but worse, I guess. Mexico finds itself at many crossroads as the new decade trudges onward. Which fork it shall travel, and what crises it shall invite, remain to be seen. Okay, I think that's just about everything. Mod features, okay, so this is just explaining how war is different. Basically, the blitz of the Second World War is no more, replaced by long slogs in hostile territory. Victory is no longer a certainty, and a player's choices must reflect this. Orders of battle have been changed, and units shifted around to reflect this reality. Thousands of new generals have been added to give the player a diversity of characters to lead their army. Narrative-based mod. Gone is the linear build-up. Yeah, it's a choose-your-own-adventure model. Yeah. Diplomatic crises. You guys can go ahead and pause and read this if you like. So, please sit back and relax and enjoy the story while you work through your country. Paths should generally be self-explanatory, and if you find yourself overly confused, please let us know, and we'll see what we can do to make it easier in the future. We don't anticipate too much issue, though, so enjoy the game and let us know what you think. Alright, mod info, ambitious mod, there it is. Social media pages are here. Reddit. But yeah, thanks very much to the development team, and again to the people on the Discord who helped me, in particular the Tortle. So cool, we can finally close this. I guess we do have time to go over our national spirits, because you always want to do that first. So here we go. We are Nixon. We are the United States. We are the last. Well, let's read Nixon first. Richard Nixon. Richard Milhouse Nixon is a complicated figure. Originally a representative and then senator from California, he rapidly rose through the ranks of Congress through skilled political maneuvering. During his time as a senator, Nixon worked closely with Joe McCarthy in carrying out the Gray Scare, working to root out suspected fascists in government. And while he didn't share the spotlight to the same extent as McCarthy did, nobody doubts that Nixon is still an anti-fascist crusader through and through. A lifelong member of the Republican Party, Nixon has never been totally comfortable working alongside the Democrats. The broad popularity of the National Progressive Party dictates that they must, however, and the coalition ticket that won him the 1960 election has made his presidency a living hell. I'm just going to say JFK instead of saying John F. Kennedy all the time. Position as the vice president has driven a wedge in the executive branch as his own magnetic charisma and stunning competence. His stunning competence! What a phrase! He's making me look bad! Have taken the spotlight away from Nixon more than once. As much as Nixon wants to focus on foreign policy so he can act to undermine the unstable German and Japanese empires, domestic affairs have gotten in the way. Civil rights issues can no longer be ignored as racial tensions flare and people demand action one way or another. While Nixon has been reluctant to endorse either segregation or integration, staying on the fence is becoming increasingly costly. Of course, Nixon is also doing what he can to keep the NPP down, including some extra-legal means. With challengers coming at him from all sides, including within the White House, Nixon will have a hell of a time trying to keep the ship of state steady. And here's JFK down here. I guess we'll read him real quick, too. As the eldest son of former President Joseph P. Kennedy, John Fitzgerald Kennedy is the heir to a troubled political legacy in America and has the charisma and bearing to remain unbowed regardless. As one of the last progressive Democrats on the East Coast, Kennedy was a natural political pick for Richard Nixon's presidential ticket in 1960, promising to bring together the dour Republican from California with a charming progressive East Coast Democrat. Unfortunately, governing would prove to be a harder challenge than campaigning for both President Nixon and Vice President Kennedy, with the Vice President frequently outshining his superior in public appearances and on Capitol Hill. Most recently serving as the President's envoy to the Japanese during the Hawaiian Missile Crisis. The American public's adulation of Kennedy has not endeared him to President Nixon, and the relationship between the two men and their wings of the party have cooled notably. Okay, we're just going to read these national spirits, and then I'm going to call it a day. Last Bastion of Liberty. The United States of America is the last light of freedom shining in a world of darkness. The other great democratic nations of this fragile world are now turned into dust, smashed by the overbearing fascist holding fists of the Reich and the rising sun. As the only major allied power to survive the inexorable advance of evil during the Second World War, America must bear the torch of liberty into this new twisted age. The American malaise. America was once a nation of indomitable will, a nation so bountiful and spirited that its optimism seemed unconquerable. That ended with the atomic bombing of Pearl Harbor. Now, across each and every one of these United States, the country is mired in a malaise with only a dim light at the end of the tunnel. The land of opportunity and idealism has been overcome by poverty and strife. It is a pit that may not be surmounted easily, and only time will tell if the patriotic fire that once burned in American hearts shall return, or if it will be extinguished. So basically, this hurts our daily political power gain, recruitable population factor, stability, and war support. Jim Crow. Since the end of Reconstruction, a brutal racial apartheid has been instituted across the southern United States, taking their name from the racist minstrel song Jump Jim Crow. The Jim Crow laws forced black Americans to live their lives separately from and completely unequal to the white population. Blacks are forced to the backs of buses, through separate entrances in buildings, into separate neighborhoods and schools, and are buried in separate cemeteries. These laws even prohibit blacks from marrying whites or using the same drinking fountains. While fiercely defended in the South, they are seen by all decent men as a backwards atrocity in the so-called land of the free. As black Americans grow more forceful in their demands for equality, America's government will soon have to choose whether to crucify Jim Crow or sacrifice their future at his altar. Hurts our stability. OFN unity is middling, so that means the Organization of Free Nations. The OFN is disunited. Unheeded pleas and lackluster performances have worn off the torch's luster and sown seeds of doubt among once stalwart proponents. The self-sane have begun to question if the coalition truly is a vehicle for advancing democratic principles rather than an extension of self-serving American designs. Likewise, more Americans than ever hold reservations over bankrolling other nations' defenses, while issues at home, healthcare, infrastructure, inequality, better deserve the public's expense. So, we've got more political power gain, less consumer good factories, more war support, trade opinion factor. Okay, we'll have to look more into that later. Organization of Free Nations is what we're part of, and we are the leader of the free world. Surrounded by existential threats from both East and West, the United States mustered allies wherever it could before drawing a line its enemies shall not cross. No matter the cost and state of affairs, the superpower swore its leaders and armies will faithfully keep watch over the thin border it had formed between sanity and madness. In recognition, governments and oppressed people alike turned towards Washington for guidance, security, and material support. Yet these privileges come with an unwritten demand. America must continue to uphold the high standards of its moniker, lest the free world family suddenly find itself without a patriarch worth following. And with that, we're going to end the day's episode. I guess this was a prologue more than anything, but in the next one, because we got all that reading out of the way, we can actually get to work, get developing the country, start figuring out what our plans are here, start doing events, and so on and so forth. We haven't even looked at the decision tab yet, so please be sure to subscribe if you haven't already and click the bell so you'll be notified whenever a new video in this series goes up. I hope that you are as excited for this series as I am. I think it's gonna be fun to read. I am sorry for the yawn. That's an unrelated thing. You know what I'm actually gonna do? I'm gonna eat some lunch. I'm gonna take a nap because I slept horribly last night, and I don't want to be yawning throughout the series. So I'll get back up after that and get to this. So I'm Conquering History Games, and I will see you next time.